Good evening. Guten Abend. Let's see. And 35. 35. There we go. Okie dokie dokie. It has been a month. We're going to have it on the 8th. So this evening, we're going to be continuing our kind of loose look through parables, which I think fits the structure pretty well because with the evening classes come and go, it's real easy to kind of get having to refresh if we went week to week. So this evening we're going to be in Luke 12 for both of them. One's going to flow into another, the watchful and the faithful servant. I've been running them at about 2 as we go. We're getting close to the sower. That one might actually take one by itself. That's an involved one and kind of fun to unpack, actually. Parable of the sower is arguably one of like the top 1, if not 3 parables, and it's probably one of the most misunderstood ones, but that's coming up probably next week. But for tonight, we'll be in Luke chapter 12 with the watchful servant and the faithful servant. And this is part of a string of, it's a long discourse about readiness. There's several that are similar. And so that's what gets a little interesting with some of these. Luke will have these, although Mark has a version of the first one. But they're similar to the parable of the 10 virgins, it's just with different figures. And so I'm trying to pull what we can from these various ones. So, anything that needs said before we get started? I think we're just kind of coming into this ready to roll. Okay. The watchful servant is the first one. It'll be in Luke 12, verses 35 through 40. So let's read that together. I'll be reading from the New American Standard of 95. They updated. Be dressed in readiness and keep your lamps lit. Be like men who are waiting for their master when he returns from the wedding feast, so that they may immediately open the door to him when he comes and knocks. Blessed are those slaves whom the master will find on the alert when he comes. Truly, I say to you that he will gird himself to serve and have them recline at the table and will come up and wait on them. Whether he comes in the second watch or even in the third, and finds them so, blessed are those slaves. But be sure of this, that if the head of the house had known at what hour the thief was coming, he would not have allowed his house to be broken into. You too be ready, for the Son of Man is coming at an hour that you do not expect. Now, you could argue that this one kind of has like a sub-parable in it with the expression with the thief at the end, and that's part of that. But you have some different figures here. So this one, we have our figures. Who do we have in view here? We have, okay, except for blue. Who do we got? Okay, there's a master. What? Oh, is it not there? Okay, hit refresh on that browser. Just F5, or do it that way. Okay, you're good. F11 to full screen it again. It just sat for too long. My bad. All right, you have the master. Nice catch, Grover. Servants. Okay. Well, you have the servants. Okay, you have the servants. I'm actually getting ahead of the next one. So you're like one of those particular ones. And those are the figures involved. It's really you have the master and those who will follow. In terms of the elements there, he talks about having clothing or being girded a particular way. And then there are also lamps, which are reminiscent of the 10 virgins, but being lit in various things. And then there is a wedding feast. I'm just going to put WF that's mentioned. But interestingly enough, the master isn't coming to a feast this time. He is returning from one. Okay. So what would you, if you were to put this into I can press it down. Like maybe a word. What would this parable describe? Be prepared. Readiness. Okay. Is it the only parable that uses this kind of a theme? There are actually quite a few. It becomes kind of a common theme. Why do you think? And this is not rhetorical, but there's no right or wrong with this, and this is more opinion here. Why do you think Christ would feel the need to impart the concept of readiness not once but multiple times and try to hammer it in our heads? Why do you think? We're not picking up on it? Okay.
It's easy as human beings to be complacent because time has passed. And it's like, well, he hasn't come, so you kind of get complacent.
Okay. The longer of a wait, the more temptation for complacency. Grover, do you have a? The king is coming. Okay. Got to figure things out. In this particular one, because the second one is going to kind of be similar to the first, but it's going to talk more about behavior. This one's going to be talking about the mindset that we have. And let's look at some of the, be dressed in readiness. Keep your lamps lit. Well, that could actually open up a question. Why? What good is it? What use is it for the servants to be in proper attire, and how we define that however you want to, whatever is necessary for them to serve the master when he's not there? What use is it for them to be properly attired and have their lamps at the ready if nothing is going to happen? What's the point? Okay, but aren't you wasting a whole bunch of resources there, burning up a whole bunch of oil, waiting on someone that isn't there? I'm trying to advocate from the opposite here. Hey, the discovery of oil saved the whales. It's true. Why? What value is there in that?
Well, it's a metaphorical lesson.
Okay.
We as human beings use that logic, that judgment, saying, well, we know that he's coming back. We've got X number of time, X number of space to wait for him. However, in this parable, they don't know the time. And so being at the ready at any moment, because he could appear at any moment, and you wanted to be the best servant.
Okay, because what is their job? It's in verse 36. What are they preparing to actually do? I mean, different parables have different things. The 10 virgins are to join the wedding feast. In this case, it's to open the door, to greet him, and then to be ready for him, because it has nothing to do with the convenience of the servant. Does the master care if things are convenient for the servant? No. You are in an ever-ready stance, even if it's the second watch or the third watch. What this, again, you can only stretch the metaphors so far, okay? But he is not necessarily approaching this from the notion of a scenario where these servants are standing around for months and years, and it really is, he's coming back sometime, we're just not sure when. We want to be prepared. But if you look at the life, if you look at the Christian walk in that way, it's still supposed to relate to that notion. And this is where you kind of get into the subjective territory a little bit, because there's a question of, over every little element, did Christ really include this element because it's a super importance, or is it not? I tend to lean toward that he didn't say any of these details without a purpose. But he mentions being girded, clothed, properly attired, and a lamp. That's weird. Those seem to be the implements, at least in this one. Being dressed in readiness, readily dressed. Keep your lamps lit. Blessed are the slaves, verse 37, the master will find on the alert, or active or aware. Alert has a similar word in its root to one we'll translate sometimes as sober-minded. It means an active look at awareness of what's happening. If you think this in terms of like a guard, one who's guarding an estate or different thing, what's the, and I'm jumping off of this, but the alertness will come back, so I promise. What is the most dangerous thing for a guard to do? Okay, that's the extreme form. But what is, falling asleep is ultimately what? Not focused. What do you wait for? And this is true in every like movie where there's like, I gotta sneak into a place, like a heist or some video games or various things. And it's true in military situations when you put scouts out and everything. They follow a pattern. They get stuck in the pattern. They get bored doing the same things. What do you do if you want to get in? You watch and take advantage of the patterns. And if the guard isn't on the alert, they're not going to see the threat until it comes. Their job is 99% boring with 1% terror, That's the truth of patrols. That's the truth of a lot of things. You relate this back to a master. Okay, you're not worried about a thief coming, though the thief is mentioned at the end, so that fits with that idea too. But if you were looking for the master, it's the same thing. You can just be, oh. Now, how hard is it to stay at a full readiness all the time, though? That's the challenge. How easy is it to kind of oh, look. What do you think that cloud looks like? I think it looks like an ice cream truck. What do you think? Oh, wow! Yeah. It's easy to lose your focus. Be girded, readily clothed, lamps lit. Now, if this is, how would this relate then to the Christian walk? Because he has in mind, well, okay, maybe I shouldn't just assume that. What is this meant to be a metaphor describing? Okay, and who is waiting for the master's return? Those who follow him, us. Now, Peter's going to ask a question in verse 41 that's interesting. Is this for us? Is this for everyone? It's like, man, Peter, you are full of yourself. But there is a certain contextual fit that could fit specifically for them, and they're going to fail, and then broadly fits with us as well. If this is meant to be over the pattern of a life instead of just an evening or a different thing, that opens up some interesting things to discuss. Is it a bad thing to have to deal or focus with other things of life as we're waiting, as long as we make sure that we're staying alert? And what I mean is, mm-hmm.
They quit their job. They're sitting there waiting for Christ to come.
Yep.
They're like, okay, it's going to happen.
Yeah.
Well, leave your life and be ready.
Okay, because he referenced in Thessalonians, 1 Thessalonians, 2 Thessalonians deal with two varied extremes. It's interesting. The first is dealing with, we missed the second coming, I guess. And the second was, we didn't miss it. We sold everything, but now we're poor and have no jobs because it's like, okay. It's the extremes, yeah. And if this is how does this practically relate? Is it practical for us to just be, No. What does it mean to be girded? To be readily dressed? Okay, well, but what does it mean? What impact does that have? To be properly clothed for when the master returns. Is there any other New Testament figure that might fit that idea? And this is again more of the subjective thing with the parable, but just some food for thought. Okay, clothe yourself, being clothed with Christ. People will argue this. I see a hint of that here, being in the right state. Okay, you had a hand. Okay. There's two things in there. They're both very good. It's the idea of being busy, being about the job, being about what we're supposed to be doing. Satan will flourish with idle hands. Idle hands are the devil's plaything in different things. And if it's in the Christian walk and you are at the readiness, you're doing what you're supposed to be, you're going to be ready for him to return. And then the second part goes to the integrity of these servants. No one's watching them, no one's checking up on them, but they did the job. It makes them good servants because the master doesn't have to be sitting there. You got it going? You doing what we're supposed to be doing? You were there. You were easy. You were right there. I don't. The figure of being properly dressed describes. To me, I take it in terms of, and you can do with as you will. This is Eric 4:17. So just do as you want. I see the clothing as like having the right attire that you're dressed to serve, and that's like a prerequisite. And the keeping the lamps lit as demonstrating kind of a bit of the action itself of service. Does that make sense? The one is you're not going to be a servant if you're not dressed like one. You need to become a Christian. And you're not going to be literally serving unless you're doing the work of a servant, keeping the lamps lit and keeping a lookout. Because the lamp, is it descriptive of making sure everything's light when the master returns? There's that general figure. With the virgins, it has to do with the feast and everything that goes with that. And he's returning from the wedding feast, which is interesting. It makes you wonder if it's meant to be the same feast, because then you get the figures in the Revelation with the bride and all of that goes there. But in the meantime, why keep the lamps lit? And you could argue it's like it's a waste of resources, a waste of oil, it's a waste of these things. Stephen?
Well, we've been reading in Leviticus where the lamps were to be continually burning, where there wasn't a moment when they weren't to be unlit.
And there's a representation that of, well, in the temple, that was God's sight, his presence, his being there. And you know, if this little light of mine, you take it to that thing, for us, that's illuminating, it's remembering it, but illuminating the world.
Within the literal sense, got the story, you can take that. The lights on means somebody's there, somebody's home, you can see what's going on, presence of activity.
Mm-hmm.
And so when the master comes, he has easy access, he knows that they're there, they're waiting for him, everything's like it should be. The lamps are off. If it's dark, then all of a sudden there's the appearance that nobody's ready. Nobody's trying.
It also invites the thief. The thief wants to strike when it's dark. I don't know. There's again, parables are one of those things where we can run to some places, but it's okay to do a little bit as long as we kind of wrangle ourselves back in and get back to, again, what's the concept? It's readiness. Can it be seen in different ways? Certainly. Is it wrong to deal with other things that have to be dealt with as long as you are remembering to be ready? No. We have those extremes. We have to live our lives. But the focus of all of that should still be setting your sight on things above. And then I guess the question is also, what's involved in Christian readiness? Is it just obeying the gospel? Is that all you need to do? Okay, I did it. I'm on the compound. I'm good. He's talking about something that's an active participation. Okay, you're a servant now. Are you doing the serving? And that's more. There's more than just, it's a part of living it, and that's what's seen there. What do the lamps represent? I just had a series of questions here, but we kind of have dealt with, I think, with a lot of them. So it's interesting where this goes, because it says, you know, verse 40, you too be ready, for the Son of Man is coming in an hour that you do not expect. So he defines that, much like the master coming at a weird hour, the Son of Man is coming. You got to think about it from their perspective for a second. From our perspective, that's actually easier to hear because he has ascended. He hasn't left yet from their perspective. He's standing right in front of them. He refers to himself as the Son of Man, so they know that he's talking about himself. how confusing would it be when he's just like, and I'll return when you don't expect? It's like, but you're right here, Jesus. So then Peter, Lord, are you addressing this parable to us or to everyone else as well? I love that. Like, who is this for? Of course, Jesus doesn't answer his question, yay or nay. He answers it with the other parable, which will be our second one. But what do you think the answer to Peter's question is? Is it just for them or is it for anyone else? Oh, you're going to say both? You're going to be that guy? How is it both then?
Well, I mean, you live your life at the ready so that whatever happens at the end of your life, you're in the state of being accepted in heaven.
Okay. So
whatever path you're on, you are ready.
okay. So you're just being inclusive that includes them and everyone else. Because would it have perhaps maybe a lesser but interesting meaning for them in terms of the moment does come. Now, it's not the same thing as a return, but there is the moment the master really does need his servants to stand by him, to be at the ready. And what do? Who stood by him through the whole thing? One of the thieves.
That's a tough question to ask. I mean, John was present.
John was present. Yeah, it's interesting when you start to look at the different Gospels, how that lines up. And if you,
Watching from afar, or
yeah, there was a sermon that I remember back when I was a teen. It was kind of a juxtaposition. I might try to steal it sometime because it's kind of cool. It was a juxtaposition between Peter and John. It's like, well, we tend to praise Peter for being bold, but we also curse him for denying. Peter's the loudmouth that tends to get all the flack for good and for bad, either which way, because he says what everyone's thinking. And then John, and you say, John doesn't do these things, but he manages to get a little bit closer. There was a suggestion also that John had some connections to the Sanhedrin through kin that allowed him to get a little bit closer. So Peter, I don't know the man, blah, 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 and he leaves. John is probably the closest in proximity. He's in the campfire. He's there. He witnesses, even in the gallery, he sees some stuff. So, okay, it was like John's in a better place here than Peter. But then later, at the tomb, both of them go. John waits at the door. Peter's the one that boldly runs in. So it's like, it's their two personalities. And it's an interesting kind of element. But neither of them, they may have been close, but neither of them wanted to be identified as his associate, which is interesting considering they were standing right there when he got arrested. They didn't arrest the rest of them. You ever wonder about that? Later, they'll be arrested after Pentecost multiple times. It's interesting.
Peter tended to ostracize himself by being the loudmouth bull in China shop, plus he came from Galilee, that bunch over there from the other side of the track.
Well, John was from Galilee, too. I mean, they were all the fishermen.
You're right. He was a fisherman. He was not as,
He was one of those.
yeah, he's not as cultured as the rest.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of who would have had the best luck. And I don't even really know if you think about it, because Matthew or Levi's a tax collector, so he serves the Romans. You got a zealot in the mix. That's a whole other problem. I don't know who would be the most respected of them. Saul? Well, yeah, but that came later. Anyway, any other thoughts on this first one? We'll transition to the second one. Because Christ will answer Peter's question with the second one. And that's in verses 42 through 48. I'll erase this, but we're going to have some overlap. And the Lord said, "Who then is the faithful and sensible steward whom his master will put in charge of his servants to give them their rations at the proper time? Blessed is that slave whom his master finds so doing when he comes. Truly I say to you that he will put him in charge of all his possessions. But if that slave says in his heart, 'My master will be a long time in coming,' and begins to beat the slaves, both men and women, and to eat and drink and get drunk, and the master of the slave will come on a day when he does not expect him, and at an hour when he does not know, and will cut him in pieces and assign him a place with the unbelievers." Wow. Verse 47, "And that slave who knew his master's will and did not get ready or act in accord with his will receive many lashes. But the one who did not know it and committed deeds worthy of a flogging received but few. From everyone who has been given much, much will be required, and to whom they entrusted much of him, they will ask all the more. It's kind of a to whom much is given, much is expected concept in verse 48. The last couple of verses kind of shifted a little bit, but again, we've got, well, now we have the master, okay? And you got the slaves, the servants under him, but you also have the steward who was going to become kind of the focus. And it's describing the one who is the head over the rest of the servants. Well, that's kind of a weird positioning. Who would he be describing as a steward here? That opens some interesting questions up. Okay.
My first thought, is obviously the leaders who are giving information, who are teaching others, who are dispensing the instructions of what they've been given.
Okay, those are the rations, possibly. Or it's just proper care. How does that relate back to the question? And this is where you can kind of go, well, he could be answering Peter directly with this to them. It's like, you guys are the steward. You have to make sure you do your job contextually. It's possibility. I'm not saying that's definite. And then the principle can generally carry over to anyone who's in a position that's been entrusted to them by God to teach or care for others. Which then, well, that's just going to be leaders, right? Leadership. It's just going to be a preacher or an elder or someone like that. Well, are you the head of a household? Are you a parent? Are you teaching someone? Are you an example? I mean, that can work its way down pretty quick. But here it's interesting because you have two options, and that's how a lot of these are structured. You have choice in behavior. The righteous one does what? Does his job, I guess would be the easy answer, but he gives the rations to the servants. Okay. The other one, what does he do? Okay, lets the power go to his head, and he eats and drinks. He eats and drinks what? The implication would be what was supposed to go to them. I mean, if he's stealing just from the general stores of the master, that's an even bigger problem. But he eats and drinks to excess, he gets drunk. He abuses his position and beats them. So they're not getting their rations. So what happens to these other servants? Then demand wages that are impossible to pay and destroy the company. No, they get bringing scabs, and then it's just, it's a whole mess. No, they don't get enough, or they starve. Why is it important that these other servants, these other slaves, and this term's used, doulos, get their rations? They don't have any control of the situation, Chris. Yep, if their needs aren't met, they can't work. That makes the entire purpose inefficient. It's one of those kind of quirky things where it's like, I'm just trying to remember, so those depictions, it's a little different in Exodus to a certain degree. I mean, they're laid low, but those depictions like in the Ten Commandments, oh, you're going to need to make bricks without straw. It's like, I was almost just like, oh, that's really dumb. You want these people to build things for you, but you're making it harder to accomplish the task, and and then you get mad when they don't meet the quota. I'm like, that's just stupid, If you're going to have a labor force, and you're going to at least want to provide them with the means to do the thing. Why else have them? But again, that requires sense. And I'm speaking in a very dark way, but They can't revolt against you too. So he can maintain his position. You're right. But how long is this going to work for? Not very long. Master comes home. Oh, hey, wait. Why is Bob back there, like, in the fetal position? Oh, what happened to Bob? Why didn't you take care of Bob? Well, funny story. How does the master react? This is the weirdest description of the Peter principle I've ever heard. He's cut into pieces. He tears him limb from limb, which is his right to do. For he forgets that even if he what is a steward? Maybe I should use that term and define that a little better. What is a steward? Does a steward have position in and of themselves? What is a steward? And not a someone who is entrusted with the property, the means of production, whatever term, of someone else. It is not their own. It is not their own. They are but a fellow servant. Yeah, they're a manager. That'd be probably the modern equivalent, but even it's that they have nothing in and of themselves. They're just trusted to manage the things. And some famous ones would be, say, Joseph. He was really good at it. Daniel is another one. They were really good stewards to the point they kept getting promoted even when they didn't want it. Until they weren't, but that's Joseph had a very up and down kind of career, shall we say. But I mean, and Daniel got to be second or third in the kingdom for a night. That's great. Wily Persians. But he's a steward. It's not his. That's why the master can destroy him. Because of he just mismanaged some things. He was just a little corrupt. I mean, it seems a little brutal. No, he had not only a position of life or death over these other people he's responsible for, but his life isn't his own either. The master can do as the master wills. And the master is just in punishing him. And then it says he's cut to pieces, and then, what's the phrasing? Place him with the unbelievers. He's cast out from the house. He has no place there. He doesn't belong.
Well, I mean, if you extend the neglect that he did on the slaves that he was over, it cost the master a lot of things, not just those one or two situations. I mean, it was devastating to the property and the stuff and the supplies. So, he had to deal with it.
Okay. Yeah, it cost a lot more to the master. In the first parable, if they're not ready, it's just going to be an inconvenience to the master. It's going to be dark. He's going to have to find someone, get some light for him, and take care of him. They're not doing their job. He will deal with them accordingly. Here, one point of failure causes a lot of damage downstream. Okay, so how would this mistreatment of the other servants possibly be manifested if we're going to carry this over to a Christian? Oh. Okay. He's very self-serving and yeah. Okay. No, that really does fit well with the idea of the debased mind. It's purely just greed and you're not even thinking clearly. You're just taking care of yourself. Well, again, I was just trying to relate this parable over. If the rations, I mean, if this is meant just to be the apostles That's still, what are the rations? What is being fed to people? Gospel, okay. Teachings. They're going to be in a position, especially when Pentecost comes, they're going to have the Holy Spirit descend. They're going to be inspired to share information, and they're supposed to follow the apostles' teaching. It's imparting them, feeding them, not physically but spiritually. If we take this generally over to someone who is in a position as a teacher, or a position as an example, position as a leader, or a position as a parent, or someone in that position, the rations then become that same spiritual example. Notice it's not described as cake or cookies or rations. What comes to mind with rations? Anyone ever had MREs? Yeah. Something that is nourishing, something that is providing sustenance for survival. Oh. In the Christian context, I mean, that's nothing special. Oh, wait. What is it that we need spiritually to be fed with? Yep. The milk and meat of the word. This describes, so it creates a very odd figure in my head. It's like someone who he'd be relating to if it's meant as a warning to Peter and them, and if it generally carries over. And again, these are just different takes on it. What kind of a person would be in a position to influence others? Possibly brethren, and focuses more on pleasing themselves than feeding others. Bad shepherd, bad leader, a bad parent, a bad Christian. Bad example. Sometimes some of these are hard to relate to because you have to get into the proper mindset of what is really the nucleus of what's in view here.
And something I'd like to throw in the mix, he doesn't mention any kind of good intentions.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't mention that he was trying to do what's right, he just messed up.
Mm-hmm.
It mentions that he was slothful and self-centered to the point that he neglected his task, his duty, and the care for the other servants.
Care for the other servants. Now again, he was slothful. It wasn't just things didn't work out. He didn't try. Much like we'll find with the talents, it has everything to do with trying, doing something. Now you want to take these things too far because it gets a little weird. People run the parable of the sower to a direction I think is really silly, and I'll explain that when we get to it. But if we try to rein this into, a steward, and then you have verses 47 and 48, a master, the slave that knew his master's will, knew what to do, and did not get ready, wasn't prepared, first parable, and did not act in accord with his will, first and second parable, will receive many lashes. They'll receive a very severe punishment. But then you have verse 40, but the one who didn't know, while guilty of a flogging, which would be even worse, isn't going to receive as much. This opens up a weird whole side discussion that I don't think even he was intending to open up about, varied punishments, although there are hints to that. And some have even run to the silly conclusion, ignorance is bliss. It's better if you don't know, because then you're not going to get the full sin. The wages of sin is still death. He is just drawing and Christ will use hyperbole sometimes. 7 times 70 on the forgiveness wasn't 490 specifically. It was meant to be hyperbolic. A camel through the eye of a needle is meant to be hyperbolic. It's meant to shock and to catch the mind. Here he's given this extreme of someone who knows better that's getting the harsh treatment, and some who doesn't know getting less punishment, but still getting punishment. It's not meant to tell us, let's blah, 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 ignorance is bliss. It's meant to say, okay, guys, you know what you need to do. Take it seriously. Because that's verse 48. The one from everyone who has been given much, much will be required. To him much is given, much is expected. With great power comes great responsibility. Yes.
This is just maybe, and maybe in a limited way, the original question was, is this to us or is this to somebody else? It may have a direct application to them because they were going to be the stewards and custodians
Yeah.
going forward.
Yes.
And so they would be the primary subjects of this teaching.
I think so. And again, it's contextual flow can be some tricky things. It's just, even if they are the contextual recipients, that doesn't mean we can't glean the general concept from it. And I think it kind of marries with the first one. So if you think, okay, are you saying to be ready, this whole readiness thing, is this, I think he's answering the question in an interesting way, because I think the first parable is for everyone. And that's the one that Peter asked about. So he tells him another one that seems more focused to his situation. But you still have those same servants. So if you think of them as the stewards for this first generation of the church that's going to come, they're the ones that are supposed to be taken care of so that those other servants can be at the ready in close with the lamps. In the first one, they kind of chain together. See if that makes sense? But would that kind of leadership end with them, or can we carry the principle forward of generational mature teaching the immature from that? I don't know. I think contextually, yes, it would focus on them, but I think we can glean the idea.
Because they themselves, in their ministry, passed it on to the next generation.
They did.
Very specifically.
They did.
So that they may teach others.
Yep. 2 Timothy 2:2, teach, share this, give this unto faithful men that they too might teach others also. Paul speaking to Timothy to change 4 generations. Paul to Timothy to teach someone else. It's the chain, and it still exists today. And you also can state, in a sense, too, that by extension of the inspiration they received in that first century, apostles and some from that first generation that they influenced, those are our New Testament inspired writers. All of them literally teach us every time we read. So there's that element too. But see, that form of stewardship can't fail because it's been recorded, which is great. Our stewardship can fail when we don't bother to share it. Here's the thing. I don't know. It gets interesting because it's like, well, are we just going to get fat off of their rations? Well, how does that happen? I don't think you can only take it to so far, but it has to do with the attitude more so than the thing. If we're slothful, if we're lazy, if we just don't care about it, or if we take advantage. Is it possible for someone to take advantage of other people in the name of Jesus as a religious leader? We see it all the time. That might be also the idea of what's in view. Now, you could say, well, if they're a false teacher, they never really were entrusted by the master, they're just claiming it, true. But it is possible for someone who started in a good place to end there too. So it's still a disaster. I don't know. It's an interesting one. It is a different one than the first has such general application. The second one's just a little different. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, Solomon started out great, then he didn't listen to his own advice.
Well, I mean, there's evidence of human beings, especially in like the last 40 or 50 years, where they probably had good intentions when they started doing what they were doing. And then as the money flowed in, and as the power flowed in, and as the opportunity exposed itself, and they took advantage, because the human element overrid the spiritual element, and they got themselves in trouble because they let that rule their lives.
Yeah.
You know, and we can list lots of, I use the word televangelists that come to mind. But,
Well, and even early general term church history is a lot of this. The church underwent a nasty amount of persecution in the 2nd and 3rd century Rome just went. Some of those emperors were evil. Not all. I mean, it kind of ebbed and flowed, but Diocletian at the end was really bad. But also in that, there were certain, shall we say, biblical experts that got some big heads. We have a lot of their writings, and they started being looked to as being the authority on things. They just started making proclamations about things they had no business doing so. And then with Constantine and the Edict of Toleration, and all of a sudden it's the state religion of Rome, and oh, well, we're not persecuting you anymore. We're going to fund you. We're going to give you nice, big, fancy buildings and all these things. Just, play the game with us. Help us to, I wasn't going to say control the population, but, it was very easy for that corruption to come into play. It would have been so much harder to stay true. You imagine the Roman state has been persecuting you. Now they want to embrace you, and you reject it because I don't serve man, I serve God. That's going to create that'd have been a hard time. And the temptations are so strong. This would still apply. I don't know. It's interesting. That's all.
The parable also reminds me of the Pharisees
Mm-hmm.
who would devour widows' houses.
It's true. Yeah, the Pharisees who would mistreat orphans and devour widows' houses and various things. They used the law as a means, or their interpretation of the law is the better way to put it. They would twist the law so they would profit and harm the innocent. And orphans and widows, man. Pure and undefiled religion is to visit orphans and widows. Orphans and widows being harmed are usually a sign. If God is talking about that things are nearing bad, and then if you get to the to the Manasseh level, things are done. Sorry, child sacrifice is the line, man. And we're like, how crazy do you have to be to get to that point? There have been many a culture over the years. It's suggested that's what destroyed Canaan. There was a lot of that going on over here in years past. It's nothing new under the sun, unfortunately. Both good and bad. Anyway, that's the two for tonight. Do we have any other thoughts of various things? Sticking points or various thoughts, various things? I know they were in the same flow, but the second one's always been a little more, to me. Okay, is there anything we need announced? We got the viewing tomorrow, 6 to 8, and the funeral Tuesday at 10 at Lakeshore Funeral Home. Got the dinner on Wednesday with different ones bringing in casseroles and such. I think we could use desserts, I think was the announcements. Work project with the teens Saturday. Any news on that? We'll hear more as we go along. That's true. Okay, TBA will learn more as it's going along. Weather might be a consideration. Next week, time change. And miss everything. Is there anyone that needs the Lord's Supper this evening? Okay. Anything else that needs mentioned? Okay. And if not, Chris, would you close us in prayer?